Greetings, fanboys and fangirls. Jared here with another video review from Fanboys Forever. Today we're going to be looking at the entire second wave of the brand new Turtles of Grayskull line in Masters of the Universe Origins. So this is a really exciting line. Of course, it's the combination of Masters Universe and Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, two very famous 80s brands. And of course for me, I grew up more with the Turtles brand, being a child of the late 80s and early 90s. And then later on, I developed an obsession with Masters of the Universe. So it is really cool to see these two different brands that I have very different kind of origins with, but the same sort of love for combined into one. Of course, I've already covered the initial first wave here on the channel, so if you missed that, be sure to go back and check that out. You're going to be seeing a lot of these reviews over the next few days, so I thought that it would be pretty cool to go ahead and get caught up so that we can move forward, do some of the newer stuff. But I am very excited about this second wave for a couple of characters in particular. Of course, before I begin, if you haven't subscribed to the channel yet, we are making our way to new milestones all the time here on Fanboys Forever, and we would really appreciate your subscription. Not only that, but like the video if you end up liking the content you see here today. With all that out of the way, let's begin. Of course, we'll look at the packaging artwork right here. I love what Mattel has cooked up for their interpretation of Turtles of Grayskull, the kind of blending of both of these lines. What I really like is how you can see the two marquee characters at the top of each one of the packages. For heroes, which is only one hero in this wave, Raphael, you can see it's got He-Man and Leonardo. But for the villains, Skeletor and Shredder. So I do think that that's really appropriate. I also really like the amount of color on these packages and really think that these stand out on the shelf, especially, now that we're starting to actually see them out and Walmart's beginning to carry these things, which is something I'm very pleased about. I also like that they have the two little stickers at the bottom of each one to say, hey, just so you know, this is Masters of the Universe with a crossover with Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Going to the back of the packages, they continue the awesome tradition of the great artwork that's featured on the back of these things. From this awesome looking Shredder themed slime pit over here, which we'll see in more artwork and other releases that we're going to review, which is incredible. Seeing an incredible version of Raphael there, it looks really nice. King Grayskull style Splinter, which is going to be out here in a month or two. There's just so many cool things going on the back of these packages, and I just can't say enough about how incredible the artwork is. All right, and you can also see the barcodes if you need those. These guys are hitting Walmart in pretty good quantities. So with all that out of the way, let's go ahead and open these guys up. All right, and here they all are out of the packaging. But before we look at the figures themselves, I do feel like a special word of mention at least needs to go out to the mini comic that these guys include. If you get the international versions of these guys, you're going to get the ones without any of the text, which is actually pretty nice because you get to see all of the great artwork without anything covering it up. And you can also see the signature of the artist a little bit better up there. This is Freddie Williams II, a very, very famous artist for doing a lot of the Turtles crossover books, and probably my favorite Ninja Turtles artist working right now. And this guy is incredible. As a matter of fact, Mattel, I implore you, just hire this guy. I mean, look at this page of He-Man. It's just unbelievable. So I'm saying right now, this is the best mini comics artwork we've ever gotten. So let's go ahead and begin. We'll do this one by one, and we'll start out with Beastman. When you first think of a crossover line like this, Beastman probably doesn't spring to your mind as one of the characters that would be the most exciting when it comes to getting to see how that would cross over with the Ninja Turtles. I mean, for one thing, it's not really exactly clear what he would do to make him more turtle-y, I guess. So their solution here to deck him out in like samurai armor and at least just have him kind of homage the Shredder in a way, or just homage, the martial arts kind of aspect, samurai aspect of this brand. I think that was brilliant. I remember when they first shown this, they didn't actually have him decked out in all of his armor, and it looked kind of weird. But seeing him with all the armor on, it looks spectacular. What I'm really impressed by are the metallic paint hits that they've done. You can see that combination of that light blue and that gold really does wonders, and it looks just great all over the armor. You can see they even carry that forward to the reused parts like Beastman's medallion there in the front. And on the back, you can see kind of similar detailing. Now, what's interesting about this is that this is just pretty much a regular old Beastman figure underneath all this armor. Let me show you. So once you take the helmet off, I mean, it's pretty close to being just a regular Beastman head. So interesting. You can even take this off down here, and once you do that, as a matter of fact, you just bisect the figure. since all these are still completely compatible with Origins. And you see what I'm saying. It's pretty much just a Beastman figure, which is fantastic for kids especially, who don't have just a regular Beastman figure, and this can be kind of their gateway into Masters in that way. And of course you can remove these shoulder pads, but you know, you get the point. So I'll just show you real quick a comparison. And you can see that the standard Beastman from Origins is right here. And these are incredibly similar figures. I do think that it's interesting some of the choices they made with the facial paint there regarding the two figures. They're very similar in a way, but also pretty different when you look at the way the paint masking is on each of these exactly the same head sculpts. Now, one of the coolest things about this figure is their choice of accessory. So you can actually see that he has this big whip here. And of course, this is right in line with Beastman's character. He always has the whip. But here it's like a segmented chain kind of thing. And it looks really cool. I especially like that metallic blue being carried forward, so I think that's terrific. He also has one of the turtle shell shields that we've been seeing. It's funny, it still has the two connector points, but there's no way to connect it to a backpack or anywhere else on the figure, which is kind of a shame. I think that would have been fun, but they didn't do anything like that. Beyond that, you can see that probably the helmet itself is the area with the greatest amount of sculptural detail. And I just think this is awesome looking, especially when you go up to the top here, and it almost sort of looks like the Time Scepter from Turtles 3 in the middle. Probably not intentional, but just something I noticed. And on the back, it looks really nice too. There's kind of a cool overspray of gold right there, which is nice because Beastman's design has always included kind of an overspray of blue right here. So I do think that's in keeping with the character. I also think the mask is sculpted to fit really well over the face, with the eye holes lining up and the mouth even lining up really well right there. One real quick thing that I'll show you is Beastman without the helmet, and I think that looks pretty good too. And finally, if you wanted to, you could take your Mossman figure, which hopefully if you guys hadn't grabbed him before, you were able to find him on clearance at Walmart recently. Of course, I wasn't going to wait for that. But yeah, all kinds of great deals to be had on Mossman if you could find one that way. Since it's the same sculpt as Beastman's head, the mask fits right over. You can have Mossman dressed up like a samurai if you want to, and that includes putting on all the rest of the armor. Just be careful because you don't want to hurt that flocking, but still I think this is a neat option and something I may try a little bit more of later. My one and only issue with this figure has absolutely nothing to do with the figure itself, but instead the lore that's in the mini comic. Even though the back of the packaging makes it sound like that Beastman has joined the heroes because he didn't like Krang and Shredder in the foot and all of that, so he didn't want to be a test subject, so he joined the Turtles. In the mini comic, you see that it's, spoiler alert, he's just tricking them to infiltrate the Turtles and lure them into a trap. I think it would be far cooler if Beastman legitimately was turning tail on Skeletor and working for them. Might not be something Mattel wants them to do, it might be a little too out of line with the character or something like that. But I actually think that would have been a lot more interesting to have just had him straight up be one of the heroes and not just an undercover henchman. Next up, we'll go with Ram Man. This is a figure that I have been very excited about because you're looking at a figure that's really huge, not necessarily by height, but by bulk. This is definitely one of the bulkier figures that you can get in that basic price point. As a matter of fact, it's a little shocking that it's not a deluxe because the guy is just so large in terms of his mass. I mean, if I just take the Mossman I had out a second ago, you can see he's pretty thin compared to all the bulk of plastic you have here. He's just very heavy. There also appears to be a variant of this guy out there where he is a lot more transparent than this, I think. I'm a little confused about it, honestly. But that's interesting. This is a little more opaque, I believe, but it still has a little bit of a feeling of transparency there with the plastic. I'm not really sure. Either way, I definitely prefer the opaque kind of purple over it just being transparent. Sometimes it doesn't look quite right. Let's go ahead and look at all the great detail this guy has to offer. You can see that poor old Ram Man here has been indeed turned into his namesake, which is hilarious and quite fitting. I really like the addition of the tiny little earring there at the top of his ear, something they definitely didn't have to do. This helmet isn't removable, but I really like the horns and the goatee and everything. You can actually see in the back, it goes all the way around, and you have these awesome spikes coming through his armor along with a little bit of weapon storage back there. Awesome chain there in the front, which is actually a separate little piece. And you have this great belt buckle and spikes around the skirt. So he's just a terrific looking figure in terms of the armor. Also, I like that he has hooves down here and fur, these are all pieces that they might be able to use for some really cool things in the future. Not only that, but a lot of these pieces are removable, which we'll look at a little bit later. Before we go too far though, I do want to show you a comparison. As you can see, even coming with the same weapons pretty much, here is regular old Ram Man. And the funny part is that this figure was a deluxe and this figure is just a standard. Of course, price points have changed a little bit since then, so it's not that much of a deal comparatively, but it's still sort of funny. I do think it's interesting that if you look at Ram Man's armor, it's so different here that it almost makes me think that they're going to reuse all these parts eventually to just do a standard Ram Man in the line. So I am very excited about that possibility. Of course, we can, kind of get a preview of how that might look by doing some part swapping, but it would be pretty hard to do, all things considered, but we may try to get at least sort of a look at that. I'm especially interested in these articulated legs for Ram Man down here, and before these were only partially articulated to accommodate the little gimmick. So I think that this is really cool that these are somehow the same character. I absolutely love that. Of course, if it suits your fancy, you can take off the tunic piece right here with these little straps, which we're all familiar with if you've collected Masters for a while now. And if you lift that up, you can see that he has a purple chest with a little bit more of the veins and things. So that's something cool that you can do if you wish. Not only that, but I suppose that if you bisect the figure and just take it apart like this, you don't even have to have the skirt piece. He can just be wearing green pants for as funny as that looks. So it's totally something you can do. And although I can't get it 100% perfect, with a little bit of switching around, you can see what I'm talking about. And man, what an incredible regular Ram Man figure these pieces would make. So that's something I certainly hope we see. Like I said, it wouldn't take too much more swapping to get this thing to just about right. Just swapping out the feet, which I probably could do. But there's things like the neck section there. So it's really a great possibility. Looking forward to seeing it, hopefully. And one more comparison we'll do is Ram Man alongside fellow mutated good guy He-Man. Even though He-Man seemed really bulky at first, putting him with Ram Man shows just how much larger Ram Man really is. I think these two guys look great together. I know at first I was a little uncertain about He-Man's aesthetic there, but seeing him with Ram Man makes the visual make more sense. So I really do like that. I also like that they're not the same exact shade of purple or whatever. He-Man's a lot more blue and Ram Man is that more magenta. So I think that that's a really cool idea, and I can't wait to see what other kind of mutated heroes that we get. And you'll be seeing some of those in some reviews that we still have to go. Now, the last thing I'll talk about with Ram Man is his articulation. Now, some of this does fall short. Say, for instance, these arms, this is as far in as they can go. If you try to push any more, they just pop out because there's no room for them to come down. But you can go out about that much. You can go up about this much before the armor stops it. It has a single jointed elbow, which that's about as good as you can get. There is a wrist rotation. There's a hinge right there. There's a rotation at the elbow. The head has some pretty good range, as you might expect. At the waist, you can go left and right. Now, the legs are a great improvement versus a previous Ram Mans we've seen because he can actually, move up and to the side right there, but the skirt does inhibit it quite a bit. Knees there are decent. It's just a single hinge and a rotation there. And then we have some great ankle rocker pivot. And you can hit those, flat foot those really wide poses if you wish. Kind of minimal effort to do that. Even though he's a little bit more limited than you would probably hope for one of these figures, he's still pretty cool and probably the best bargain in the whole wave. Truly an impressive figure. And by far what will probably be the most demanded figure in the wave, we have that lovable hothead Raphael, my favorite of all the turtles ever since I was a kid. So Raphael here is in some really cool kind of Eternian armor. It is slightly reminiscent actually of Ram Man's armor, so I think that's pretty cool. I do like how he kind of almost has a turtle shell football helmet, so I think that's pretty neat. He has a pretty cool little pad there on the side. I like the design of the chest harness and the little skirt piece, loincloth piece. And I like how they have red all over and on the boots and things like that. So I think that he cuts a great silhouette. He also has his turtle shell in the back, which is removable like some of the other turtles that we've seen. And also he comes with this big thing to wear over his hand. Now this actually reminds me a little bit of the weird Turtles Volume 3 Image Comics stuff where some of the turtles are have injuries and they're wearing things, to augment themselves, and it kind of looks like Raphael. when he wears like the Shredder armor and that. It's kind of weird. Over here, we kind of have a giant sai that he uses, which I think is pretty cool looking. And of course, this is removable, just so that everybody can see. Speaking of removable, the helmet is also removable. That means that poor Donatello was the only one out of the 4 main turtles, because we already, have seen pictures and images and things of Michelangelo able to remove his garb. Donatello was the only one who didn't have a removable helmet piece. So I'm really hoping that they fix that later on, because you could just have, 4 regular turtles, if not for Donatello's limitation there. So that really is a shame. Speaking on those head sculpts, though, I just want to show you how great this is. This really does remind me of the 2003 Ninja Turtles cartoon, which is by far my favorite Turtles adaptation, aside from maybe the first live-action film. And so I think that looks terrific. Also on the back, you can see that he has his bandana tassels right there, and you can pose those around. Other than that, the articulation is exactly what you would expect for the Turtles of Grayskull line. Keep in mind, you're also able to remove all this chest garb, and you can just get kind of a bulked out Turtles He-Man style shell. So I'll show you how that looks. So yeah, that actually looks pretty good too. Keep in mind, you can also get rid of this loincloth, but it's just more furry underwear under there. This looks pretty good. The proportions are a little weird, of course, but he's supposed to be a halfway point between this and Masters of the Universe. So I do think this is pretty neat. There may be less to discuss with Raphael here, because honestly, I don't really have any notes. It's pretty well exactly what I would have thought that it needed to be. They've done a great job of incorporating just enough of those Masters of the Universe design cues and elements into the figure itself, and also giving us a pretty traditional Raphael. Probably about the worst thing they could have done with these Turtles figures in this line would be to have made them so garbed up that they were pretty much unrecognizable. Thankfully, that's not the case, and because of that, this is a great collaboration design-wise between the folks at Mattel and the folks at Viacom. And just so you can see, here are the 3 turtles that I have so far. However, that Michelangelo review is only a couple of days away, because he will be here tomorrow. So yeah, coming soon. I also want to note that I don't think I realized how cool these guys would all look together, especially with how much more prominent their colors are this way. I think that there's really something special about putting these guys together. Can't wait to see what Mikey looks like with these other guys. And now you face the Shredder. This is a figure I've been looking forward to ever since they announced this collaboration, because for whatever reason, it seems like the Shredder is always the figure that I'm most interested in every time that they do any kind of Turtles toy line. I think the Shredder is a very special blend of Darth Vader and samurai kind of aesthetics to create something really, really awesome. And I've always totally loved every time that we get to see a new take on the character. And overall, I think this one really doesn't disappoint. I think some people were maybe slightly disappointed that it wasn't as traditional as they hoped. I think a lot of folks were probably hoping for more of just the old, 80s cartoon Shredder, just brought into the Masters of the Universe Origins. But that's not what we have here. I would say, if I had to guess, that there's probably a stipulation in the contract with Mattel. They don't need to just do a recreation, because other companies already have that license, like Playmates. They're already the ones that get to do a classic version of, say, Shredder or Krang or something. So it was probably in there that Viacom was only going to improve these designs if they probably did something to go their own way, I guess. But in my opinion, that doesn't really hurt this guy whatsoever. Matter of fact, I think it really adds to it. First of all, I think that it's awesome that he has like the 2003 cartoon version of the Foot Clan logo right there on the front. That does give him more of that Masters of the Universe vibe, especially, having a harness with a logo right in the middle. To me, that's very, very Masters. So I think that's one of the reasons they did that. He's plenty traditional enough with his shoulder pads and the shin guards, and even, the big blades that he has on his hand there. So those are all very traditional elements. Some of the things that are a little different, I suppose, would be things like making the helmet flare out more, especially like at those angles right there. I think that that's definitely, a different kind of thing. You can see that from different angles, they've kind of added more lining and things to the front face mask, and they've given him the red eyes with the black background, which is more in line with the 2003 show. But also, this kind of does put me in the mind a little bit of the helmet for, like, say, the Next Mutation Shredder figure, or the Turtles Out of the Shadows Shredder, or something like that. I know that neither one of those designs are probably, anybody's favorite, but still, they do kind of put me in that mind a little bit. He does come with a horde bow for what it's worth. I think it's kind of a, I don't want to say useless, but I could live without it. I don't think it's that necessary. As a matter of fact, I'm much more interested in just seeing his blades a little bit better. See the Shredder in that original toy pose like this, when he was kind of stuck that way, that we all remember when we were kids, or at least most of us, I think, probably in the age range watching this video. So it's great that he can do that. On the back, you have probably an interesting choice, I think, design-wise, that he has this blue cape. This is probably the one and only design choice that I would be like, maybe not. I think blue cape on the Shredder is kind of weird. It's not really something I'm used to seeing. I'm sure it's been done sometime before, so fill me in the comments below if you know when that was. But it's not really something that I'm too excited about. I think it does work here because, I guess they wanted something different to break up the colors. They would have been better off having this be blue and maybe the purple cape in the back, or just having them both be purple. I don't think that would have been a problem. Maybe it had something to do with them maybe wanting to vary it up more, or Viacom asking them to vary it up more. Maybe it was too much like traditional Shredder and they requested that change. So I would say that we probably shouldn't be too hasty in our judgment of the design team on that one. He does come with a weapon that I actually do like, and that's this cool axe that has the 2003 foot logo on it. Kind of an odd choice, I think, in a way, because I probably would have preferred the Shredder to have had a sword. The axe, though, ends up being cooler than just a generic katana or something like that. So, yeah, color me surprised on that one. Not something I would have necessarily asked for, but it's certainly a lot more metal and a lot more, Masters of the Universe-esque, I guess. It is funny that the Shredder has the furry underwear, but everything else is like the same color, so it ends up just looking like he's got pants that have integrated furry underwear. So it's kind of funny there. But below the shin guards, he does have these kind of monster feet that are like boots. I don't really know what they were going for here. Maybe like pointed ninja boots or something. Maybe they should have just went with the standard feet. Maybe it was a way to make him more monstrous, more menacing. I'm not really sure. It's not a deal breaker and I don't really care that much, but it's definitely something worth pointing out. Either way, this is a really cool figure, and you can make a few changes if you want to make him look more traditional, and I'll show you right now what those are. Pretty easily you can remove the cape and all that, but this is kind of difficult to get pushed back in there, unfortunately. And very simply, if you own the Keldor figure that came in the Target 2-pack, you can take that purple cape and put on the chest. And voila, you have something of a much more accurate version of the Shredder. It is kind of weird to see the little tie right there in the front with the cape. But overall, he's a lot more like the 80s toy this way, with the purple cape and the bare chest. Now, keep in mind, I actually don't think this looks much better than what they had for us. Well, obviously, I guess he seems a little naked this way. Is this something you can do? Is it something that you should bother with? Probably not. But yeah, it's definitely something you can do. And you never know, they may repurpose this guy later on and do something a little more traditional if they can work it out with Viacom. So I have to say that Turtles of Grayskull Wave 2 is even more of a banger than Wave 1, with figures that are a whole lot more creative and varied and interesting and super well designed. These are some of the best toys that you can get in the regular toy aisle at brick and mortar today, and I'm really glad to see that Walmart has expanded the line and carrying these guys. But the great thing about these, and you don't see this too often anymore, is that they're the kind of line that can be enjoyed in almost equal measure by collectors and children alike, and that's a really hard thing to capture in today's market. Especially for the value you get for something like a Ram Man, it's very easy to say that there's not a single dud figure in this lineup, and in my opinion, it would be a shame to leave any of these sitting on the shelf. So would I recommend them? Of course I would. All 4 of them, you definitely want to get the complete set. Alright guys, like I said, in the next few days you're going to be seeing a lot more reviews of these guys, so yeah, be on the lookout for that. And as always, God bless you and yours, and I'll see you on Fanboys Forever. Fanboy out.